Once upon a time, in the wild, untamed lands of the Old West, a world filled with dust-covered streets, small towns, and the rhythmic clip-clop of horses ruled. This was not just any land. It was a place of extraordinary adventures where lawmen became living legends and outlaws were feared and revered in equal measure. Welcome to the Old West, where tales of bravery, survival, and rebellion echoed across the frontier. The line between good and evil blurred, and real people walked this treacherous line, facing danger with both heroism and recklessness. In this unforgiving wilderness, lawmen were the closest thing to superheroes, donning their badges like shields, standing firm against the tides of chaos. These men protected their towns, fought off bandits, and delivered justice with iron fists. Their names, like Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok, are etched into history because they refused to back down. Even when the odds were stacked against them, fearless and steadfast, they made a name for themselves in the annals of the American frontier. But for every hero, there was a villain. Outlaws, with their wild antics and audacious heists, lived lives on the edge, constantly evading the long arm of the law. Names like Billy the Kid and Jesse James are still whispered with awe and fear. They robbed banks, hijacked trains, and became infamous symbols of the lawless frontier. Their legends grew with every narrow escape, every daring heist, and every blood-pumping chase. Now, prepare to embark on an unforgettable journey through the stories of the Old West, where legendary lawmen and notorious outlaws clashed in an endless struggle for dominance. From heroic marshals who brought order to the untamed land to outlaws who lived by their own rules, these tales will captivate and inspire. Let's begin with the legendary Wyatt Earp, one of the most iconic figures in the Old West. Born on March 19, 1848, in Monmouth, Illinois, Wyatt Barry Stapp Earp's life was one of constant movement and adventure. From a young age, his family moved from place to place, Illinois, Iowa, California, each relocation feeding the restless spirit that would come to define him. Wyatt grew up with a sense of duty, hardened by a nomadic lifestyle, but it was the lure of law enforcement that set his course. His career as a lawman began in Wichita, Kansas, in 1875, where he quickly gained a reputation as a hard-nosed enforcer who didn't shy away from conflict. In Wichita, Earp was known for his no-nonsense approach to law enforcement, but his time there was cut short after a heated altercation. Undeterred, he moved to Dodge City, Kansas, where his legend only grew. Dodge City was a lawless place, teeming with crime, but Earp thrived. Alongside other figures like Bat Masterson, he took on outlaws with steely resolve. Earp's ability to remain calm under pressure and his strategic mind made him a force to be reckoned with. But it was in Tombstone, Arizona, that Wyatt Earp's legacy was truly forged. In 1879, he and his brothers arrived in Tombstone, drawn by the promise of silver. However, they found themselves embroiled in a deadly feud with the Clanton-McClaughry gang, culminating in the infamous gunfight at the O.K. Corral on October 26, 1881. The gunfight, though lasting only 30 seconds, left an indelible mark on history. Wyatt Earp, along with his brothers Virgil and Morgan, and ally Doc Holliday, faced down the gang in a blaze of gunfire, leaving 3 of the gang members dead. Wyatt emerged unscathed, and the legend of the fearless lawman was born. However, the aftermath was far from simple. The Earps were accused of murder and faced legal battles, but they were eventually acquitted. But vengeance lingered in the air. When Morgan Earp was assassinated and Virgil was gravely injured, Wyatt set out on a relentless quest for revenge, hunting down those responsible and cementing his place as a man who stood for justice at any cost. In the twilight of his life, Wyatt Earp drifted through various boon towns, but his legend only grew, immortalized in countless books, films, and TV shows. Wyatt's legacy shares space with another iconic figure, Pat Garrett. Born in 1850 in Alabama, Garrett's life took him westward after the Civil War, where he found his calling as a lawman. His greatest claim to fame came in his relentless pursuit of Billy the Kid, a notorious outlaw. Garrett tracked Billy across New Mexico in a deadly game of cat and mouse, finally cornering him in a dramatic shootout in 1880. Though Billy escaped custody once, Garrett's pursuit ended in a fateful encounter in 1881, when he shot and killed the kid, sealing his place in history. Yet, Garrett's life was not without its tragedies. Despite his fame, he struggled with personal and professional setbacks, eventually meeting a mysterious end in 1908. Though his death remains clouded in suspicion, Garrett's legacy as the man who took down Billy the Kid endures. And then there's Bass Reeves, a name not as widely known but equally legendary. Born into slavery in 1838, Bass Reeves escaped to freedom during the Civil War. Living among Native American tribes and learning survival skills that would later serve him well. In 1875, Reeves became one of the first black deputy U.S. Marshals, tasked with bringing law and order to the Indian Territory. His skills as a tracker and his knowledge of the land made him an exceptional lawman. Reeves' career was marked by countless arrests and confrontations with outlaws. His sense of duty and fairness knew no bounds, even when faced with the most difficult decision of his life, arresting his own son for murder. Though it broke his heart, Reeves upheld the law, proving that justice was above all. The Old West was a land where legends were born and where the line between right and wrong was often razor thin. From the fearless Wyatt Earp to the determined Pat Garrett, from the relentless pursuit of Billy the Kid to the groundbreaking career of Bass Reeves. These stories are the lifeblood of the American frontier. Their legacies, filled with danger, heroism, and tragedy, continue to captivate us, reminding us of a time when the wild frontier was tamed by those brave enough to face its challenges head-on. In 1907, after serving for decades as a deputy U.S. Marshal, Bass Reeves transitioned to working as a city policeman in Muskogee, Oklahoma, continuing his long-standing commitment to law enforcement. Despite his age and declining health, he remained dedicated to his duty, upholding the law until he could no longer serve. Reeves ultimately passed away on January 12, 1910, succumbing to Bright's disease, a kidney ailment that was poorly understood at the time and often led to renal failure. As we shift focus from the stalwart lawmen to the notorious outlaws, we delve into the story of one of the Wild West's most infamous figures, Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty around 1859, adopted the alias William H. Bonney later in life. His early years were marked by hardship and instability. After his father's mysterious disappearance, young Henry was raised by his mother Catherine and her partner, William Antrim. By 1865, the family had ventured westward, eventually settling in Wichita, Kansas. By 1873, they had relocated to the New Mexico Territory, where Antrim married Catherine. While Antrim worked in the mines, Catherine took in boarders to support the family. However, tragedy struck when Catherine died of tuberculosis in 1874, leaving 14-year-old Henry and his younger brother, Joe, orphaned. Following his mother's death, Henry's life began to unravel. His stepfather showed little interest in raising him and his brother, leaving them to fend for themselves. Henry found himself in a foster home, but it wasn't long before he began to drift into trouble. At just 15 years old, Henry was arrested for the first time after helping a friend hide stolen goods. He escaped jail by slipping up a chimney, marking the beginning of a life constantly on the run. His daring escape made headlines, and thus, Billy the Kid's outlaw career began. Billy's early years as a fugitive were filled with a mix of ranch work and petty crimes. His youthful appearance earned him the nickname, the Kid, but it was his growing involvement with local outlaws that cemented his reputation. He became entangled with John Mackey, an ex-soldier turned criminal, and joined in horse thefts and other illegal activities. After several close encounters with law enforcement, Billy's fate took a sharp turn when he killed his first man in what was described as a self-defense shooting. This event escalated his descent into a full-fledged life of crime. Billy's most infamous chapter came with his participation in the Lincoln County War, a violent conflict in New Mexico over control of the region's economic power. He joined the Regulators, a group fighting against the corrupt businessmen and politicians of the area. The war was bloody, and Billy's involvement deepened his notoriety. He became a symbol of rebellion, known for his quick draw, strategic mind, and fearless nature. As the conflict raged, Billy's legend grew, fueled by his daring exploits and ability to evade capture. Billy the Kid's criminal career was marked by a string of high-stakes shootouts, narrow escapes, and increasing infamy. His most famous adversary, however, would be Sheriff Pat Garrett, a former friend turned relentless hunter. Garrett was elected sheriff of Lincoln County in 1880, and his mission was clear: bring down Billy the Kid. The cat-and-mouse chase between Billy and Garrett became legendary in its own right. In December 1880, Garrett captured Billy, but the Kid managed a dramatic escape from jail in April 1881, killing 2 deputies in the process. This escape only added to Billy's myth, but it also sealed his fate. Garrett resumed his pursuit with even more determination, tracking Billy across the New Mexico desert. Finally, on the night of July 14, 1881, Garrett caught up with Billy at Fort Sumner. In a darkened room, Garrett ambushed the unsuspecting outlaw, ending Billy the Kid's life with 2 fatal shots. Billy's death at just 21 years old cemented his status as one of the most legendary outlaws of the American frontier. His brief life, filled with violence, rebellion, and relentless pursuit, became the stuff of folklore. Songs, books, and movies have since immortalized Billy the Kid, portraying him as both a ruthless outlaw and a tragic antihero. His legacy, much like that of the lawmen who pursued him, remains an enduring part of the mythology of the Wild West. The Old West was a land of contradictions, where heroes and villains often walked the same narrow path. Lawmen like Bass Reeves and Wyatt Earp fought to bring order to a chaotic frontier, while outlaws like Billy the Kid embraced the lawlessness, becoming infamous in their defiance. Their stories continue to capture the imagination, a testament to the wild, untamed spirit of the American frontier. Pat Garrett's relentless pursuit of Billy the Kid culminated in a dramatic showdown at Fort Sumner, New Mexico. On the night of July 14, 1881, Garrett and his deputies finally closed in on the outlaw at Maxwell Ranch. In a tense and fateful moment, Garrett shot Billy the Kid, ending the life of one of the Wild West's most notorious outlaws. Billy, at just 21 years old, had lived a brief but explosive life, forever etched in history as a symbol of rebellion and defiance. Another infamous figure of the Wild West, Jesse James, was born on September 5, 1847, in Missouri. After the death of his father, Jesse and his older brother Frank were drawn into the turbulent violence of the Civil War, joining Confederate guerrilla groups that waged brutal attacks on Union soldiers and sympathizers. Jesse's participation in the notorious Centralia massacre in 1864 left a permanent scar on his conscience. But it also planted the seeds for the outlaw he would become. In the aftermath of the war, the Reconstruction era brought hardship and resentment for many former Confederate fighters. Jesse and Frank, embittered by the chaos, transitioned from guerrilla warfare to a life of crime. By the late 1860s, they had formed the James Younger Gang, and their violent robberies of banks, trains, and stagecoaches left a bloody trail across the Midwest. The gang's meticulous planning, coupled with their ruthless tactics, allowed them to evade capture for years. Their first major heist in 1866 saw them rob a bank in Liberty, Missouri, marking the start of Jesse James's legendary criminal career. One of the gang's most infamous failures came in Northfield, Minnesota, where an attempt to rob the First National Bank turned disastrous. The townspeople fought back, and the ensuing chaos resulted in the deaths of 2 gang members and the capture of the younger brothers. Jesse and Frank barely escaped, but this marked the beginning of the end for their criminal reign. Jesse would eventually go into hiding, living under the alias Thomas Howard. However, betrayal was never far behind. In 1882, one of his own gang members, Robert Ford, shot Jesse James in the back for the reward money, ending the outlaw's life in one of the most famous betrayals in American history. Another figure to emerge from the shadows of the Wild West was Alonzo Longabaugh, better known as the Sundance Kid. Born in 1867, Longabaugh's life of crime began with horse theft, leading to his eventual partnership with the infamous Butch Cassidy. Together, they formed the Wild Bunch, a notorious gang that became known for their daring bank and train robberies. Operating out of their remote hideout in Wyoming's Hole in the Wall, the Wild Bunch executed some of the most well-planned heists of their time. One of their most famous exploits occurred in 1899 when they robbed a Union Pacific train, blowing up the safe with dynamite and escaping with a fortune. As law enforcement closed in, Cassidy and the Sundance Kid fled to South America, where they continued their outlaw activities. In Bolivia, they reportedly met their end in a violent gunfight with Bolivian authorities, though rumors and speculation still surround their fate, with some believing they may have escaped. These stories of lawmen and outlaws paint a vivid picture of the Wild West, an era defined by thrilling adventures, dangerous pursuits, and fierce battles for survival. Whether standing on the side of the law or against it, figures like Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and the Sundance Kid played vital roles in shaping the legend of the untamed American frontier. Their tales of courage, betrayal, and rebellion continue to captivate, reminding us of a time when the West was wild, and life was lived on the edge.